Never beg for attention or love because the moment you do, everything about the dynamic shifts, and not in your favor. When you beg, you think you're showing effort, loyalty, or sincerity, but what you're really showing is insecurity and fear of loss. You're telling her without words that you don't believe you're enough on your own. You're showing her that she holds the power, that you're willing to sacrifice your dignity just to stay relevant in her life. And once someone sees you that way, it becomes almost impossible for them to respect you again. Respect is the foundation of attraction. A woman doesn't fall for a man because he chases her desperately. She falls for a man because he carries himself with quiet confidence, because he values himself, because he understands that love should be a choice, not a reward for suffering. When you beg, you start accepting behavior you would never tolerate from anyone else. You tolerate cold replies, ignored messages, broken promises, and emotional distance. You convince yourself that if you just try a little harder, she might eventually appreciate you. But that's the trap. The more you give when she's giving nothing back, the less she values what you offer. Humans don't respect what comes too easy, and that applies here more than anywhere else. The harder you chase, the faster she runs. Not because she's cruel, but because you're signaling that you have no other options, no self-control, and no standards. A man who respects himself doesn't beg. He chooses, he doesn't chase, he attracts. Begging also kills your confidence from within. Every time you send a double text, every time you apologize just to keep the peace, every time you tolerate being placed last, a part of you shrinks. You start living in emotional debt, always trying to prove your worth, always trying to earn something that should have been given freely. And deep down, you know you're betraying yourself. You know that you're acting out of fear, not love. Fear of being alone, fear of losing her, fear of not finding anyone else, but men who operate out of fear always lose, because fear pushes you into decisions that weaken your identity. What you have to understand is that real love, real interest, real connection does not require begging. When a woman genuinely wants you, she meets you halfway. She calls, she texts, she checks on you, she makes plans, she invests in you emotionally and mentally. She doesn't keep you guessing, she doesn't use your effort as entertainment, she shows consistency. And here is the truth. The right woman will never make you beg. The wrong woman will never stop making you beg. So you must choose what kind of man you want to be. A man who bends for love, or a man who stands tall and lets love come naturally. You don't need to convince anyone to see your worth. You don't need to fight for a spot in someone's life. Your presence, your energy, your purpose. These speak louder than any desperate words. Be the man who walks away with his pride intact. Because when you stop begging, you finally create space for someone who genuinely wants to stay. Never put her above your purpose, because the moment you do, you lose the very thing that makes you attractive, grounded, and powerful as a man. Your purpose is not just a goal, it is your direction, your identity, your fuel. It's the reason you wake up, the thing that pushes you to grow, the force that shapes your confidence and your mindset. When you sacrifice that for a woman, even with good intentions, you slowly begin to lose the core of who you are. And once a man loses his purpose, he becomes emotionally dependent, easily controlled, and unstable within himself. No woman truly admires a man who abandons his mission just to keep her satisfied. She may enjoy the attention at first, but over time she will feel the shift. She will feel the loss of drive, the lack of goals, the absence of ambition. And nothing kills attraction faster than a man who loses himself. When you make her the center of your universe, she carries a weight she never asked for. You expect her to be your motivation, your peace, your direction, and no human being can handle that load. A woman wants a man who knows where he's going, not a man who's waiting for her to give him purpose. She wants to feel like she's joining a life that's already in motion, not one that depends entirely on her approval. A man on his purpose is magnetic. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't cling. He doesn't lose balance when things go wrong, because he's anchored by something bigger than a relationship. But a man who gives all of that up becomes predictable, weak, and emotionally reactive. His happiness becomes tied to her mood, her attention, her decisions. And that level of attachment suffocates both people. When you stay aligned with your purpose, everything in your life improves. Your mindset sharpens, your confidence grows, your standards rise. You make better decisions, you show up stronger, and you become harder to replace. Ironically, this is exactly what makes a woman more attracted to you. Not the time you sacrifice, not the affection you give endlessly, but the discipline you carry, the focus, the ambition, the unshakable drive. These qualities make you a leader, a protector, a man with a path. And women naturally want to be with a man who is moving forward, not standing still. Putting her above your purpose doesn't just hurt attraction, it hurts your future. You pause your dreams, delay your goals, and ignore your growth because you think love requires sacrifice. But real love doesn't require you to shrink. It requires you to rise. The right woman will push you forward, not distract you. She will respect your grind, not compete with it. She will admire your passion, not try to replace it. A woman can be a great part of your life, but she should never become your whole life. Your purpose comes first because without it, you lose the very strength that makes you valuable. When you stay dedicated to your mission, you keep your power, your identity, and your future intact. And the woman who truly belongs in your life will admire you for it, not resent it. Never tolerate disrespect or one-sided effort, because the moment you do, you teach her and everyone around you how to treat you. Disrespect rarely shows up loudly in the beginning. It starts small. A dismissive comment, an ignored message, a joke that goes too far, a change in tone, a sudden lack of effort. And if you stay silent, if you accept it, if you pretend it's not a big deal, you silently approve it. This is where most men make their biggest mistake. They believe that being patient, forgiving, or understanding will fix the situation. But in reality, every time you overlook disrespect, you lower your value in her eyes. A woman cannot respect a man who cannot respect himself. One-sided effort is another trap that men fall into. When you're the only one texting first, planning everything, giving all your emotional energy, adjusting your schedule, and showing interest, you create an imbalance. You're doing the work of two people in a connection that should be mutual. And the more you give, the less she feels she needs to contribute. Not because she's bad, but because you're allowing her to treat you like an option while you treat her like a priority. People naturally mirror the standards you set. If your standard is, I'll do everything, she will let you. If your standard is, effort must be equal, only the woman who respects you will stay. Disrespect also grows when you react emotionally, but never act decisively. You may complain, argue, or feel hurt, but still stay. Still text, still chase. Still try to convince her to change. But change never happens through words. It happens through action. The moment you walk away from someone who disrespects you, you reclaim your power. You remind yourself that your dignity is worth more than her attention. Staying with someone who treats you poorly doesn't show strength. It shows fear of losing her, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. But the real loss is staying in a place where you are undervalued. You must understand something essential. A woman will only invest in a man she respects. Respect doesn't come from gifts, compliments, money, or effort. Respect comes from boundaries, from standards, from the strength to walk away when you're not being valued. When you allow disrespect once, it never stops there. It slowly becomes the norm. She becomes colder, less appreciative, less responsive, and you become more anxious, more confused, more desperate to fix things. But the truth is, the problem isn't her behavior. It's your acceptance of it. Effort should be mutual. Respect should be mutual. Interest should be mutual. If it's not, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a cycle of emotional imbalance. And that cycle drains your confidence, your motivation, and your sense of worth. Never stay where you are not valued. Never fight for a place where you are not respected. The right woman will never force you to tolerate disrespect or carry the weight of the relationship alone. When you honor yourself, you attract someone who will honor you too. Never try to save or fix her life to win her love, because the moment you do, you step out of your role as a man and into the role of a rescuer, something no woman is truly attracted to, long term. Many men believe that if they help her solve her problems, carry her emotional burdens, or fix her life, she will finally see their value. They think that being her hero will earn them love, loyalty, or appreciation. But the truth is harsh. When you try too hard to fix everything for her, she doesn't see strength. She sees weakness. She sees a man who is trying to buy affection with emotional labor. She sees someone who needs validation so badly that he will overextend himself just to feel needed. A mature woman wants support, not saving. There is a huge difference. Support respects her independence, but saving tries to replace it. When you fix everything for her, you unintentionally make her problems more important than your purpose, your goals, and your emotional balance. You put her life above your own. It starts small, offering advice she didn't ask for, stepping in to solve issues she should handle, giving her money to help out, doing favors at the cost of your own time and peace. At first, she may appreciate the effort, but over time, she starts taking it for granted, and eventually, she expects it. Because the moment you show that you're willing to shoulder her burdens, you train her to let you carry them. Trying to fix her life also creates emotional imbalance. She becomes the one with problems, and you become the one with solutions. That dynamic destroys attraction. Romance requires equality. Respect requires boundaries. But when you act like the savior, you place yourself below her emotionally, because you're always giving and she's always receiving. This unspoken imbalance eventually turns into resentment. You resent her for not appreciating you, and she resents you for trying to control her life under the disguise of help. A man must understand that his value doesn't come from how much he fixes, but from who he is. A strong mind, a focused purpose, discipline, standards, emotional control. This is what makes a man attractive, not being a repairman for her emotional chaos. When you step into the savior role, you lose your mystery, your masculine edge, and your emotional grounding. You become predictable, always available, always giving, always rescuing. And nothing is less attractive than a man who has nothing better to do than solve someone else's problems. A healthy connection happens when both people handle their own responsibilities and choose each other from a place of stability. You can encourage her, motivate her, and support her without becoming responsible for her entire life. Let her fight her own battles. Let her grow through her own challenges. Let her solve what she needs to solve. That's how she becomes stronger, and that's how she truly respects you. Never change who you are just to please her, because the moment you do, you begin losing the most valuable thing you bring into any relationship, your authenticity. Too many men fall into the trap of molding themselves into whatever they think a woman wants. They change their personality, their interests, their behavior, even their beliefs just to fit her expectations. At first, it might feel harmless. You might think it's just a small adjustment, or she'll like me more if I act this way. But every little change chips away at your identity, and over time you become a version of yourself that doesn't even feel like you anymore. When you reshape yourself to impress her, you unknowingly send a message. Who I truly am is not enough. This creates insecurity because you're constantly performing, constantly guessing what she wants, constantly trying to maintain an image that isn't real. It drains your confidence. It makes you anxious. You become afraid she'll discover the real you and walk away. And here's the sad part. She eventually senses that you're not being genuine. Humans naturally feel when someone is pretending, and nothing feels less trustworthy or less attractive than a man who isn't comfortable being himself. Authenticity is magnetic. A man who stands solid in his identity has a presence that draws people in effortlessly. He's not afraid to say no. He's not afraid to have different opinions. He's not afraid to show his real personality, flaws and all. Women respect men who are unapologetically themselves because it signals strength, self-awareness, and emotional independence. When you stay true to who you are, you build a connection based on truth. When you fake your identity, you build a connection based on illusion, and illusions always collapse. Changing yourself for her also creates long-term resentment. You might not notice it at first, but eventually you begin to feel like you gave up too much. You feel drained, lost, and disconnected from your own life. You might even blame her for making you change, even though she never demanded it. You imposed it on yourself out of fear of not being accepted. And when resentment builds, the relationship becomes unhealthy for both of you. The right woman doesn't want a perfect man. She wants a real one. Someone honest, consistent, and confident in who he is. If she has to like a version of you that you manufactured, then she doesn't like you. She likes the performance. And a relationship built on performance is destined to fail the moment you get tired of pretending. The real test is this. Can you show up as yourself, your true personality, your true energy, your true values, and still feel enough? If yes, you're dealing with something real. If not, you're dealing with a situation that will only drain you. Being yourself isn't just about attracting the right woman. It's about attracting the right life. When you value your identity, you attract people who appreciate you for exactly who you are. And that is worth more than any temporary approval you could earn by pretending. Never make her your entire source of happiness, because the moment you do, you hand someone else the power to control your emotional world. When a man relies completely on a woman for his joy, excitement, motivation, and emotional stability, he stops being a whole person and becomes dependent. At first, it might feel romantic. You tell yourself it's love. You convince yourself that she completes you, that she's the reason your life feels meaningful. But over time, this dependence becomes a burden, not just for you, but for her. No woman wants to be responsible for a man's entire emotional state. It feels heavy, suffocating, and unfair. A relationship is supposed to be two whole people sharing their lives, not one person losing his identity and expecting the other to carry it. When she becomes your entire happiness, you stop nurturing the parts of your life that keep you strong. Your purpose, your hobbies, your friendships, your goals, your growth. You stop being the man you were before you met her. The irony is painful. the very qualities that attracted her in the first place. Your independence, your drive, your stability start to fade. You begin orbiting around her. Every thought, every decision, every action starts revolving around what she thinks, what she wants, how she feels. And the more you do this, the more pressure she feels, and the less attraction she has. Women love being valued, but they don't love being idolized. Depending on her for happiness also creates emotional instability inside you. When she's attentive, you feel high. When she pulls away, you panic. When she's distant, you feel empty. Your emotions start rising and falling based on her mood, her replies, her actions. And no human being is consistent enough for you to build your emotional world on them. Mood changes, arguments, stress, misunderstandings, these are all normal parts of life. But when she's your only source of happiness, every small conflict becomes a crisis. A man who builds a life outside of his relationship brings strength to the relationship. A man who builds his entire life around the relationship brings pressure to it. Happiness should come from within. From your progress, your loved ones, your goals, your passions, your accomplishments, your inner peace. A woman should add to your happiness, not become responsible for all of it. When you make her your entire happiness, you also lose your ability to walk away from situations that hurt you. Even when you're disrespected, ignored, or undervalued, you stay. Because losing her feels like losing life itself. That's how men end up trapped in toxic cycles because they connected their identity to someone else's presence. But when a man has a fulfilling, purposeful life outside of a woman, he has emotional strength, he has options, he has clarity. He chooses a relationship, not because he needs it, but because he genuinely wants it. The healthiest, strongest, most attractive men are the ones who can share their happiness, not outsource it. When you build a life that makes you proud, confident, and fulfilled, you bring the best version of yourself into any relationship. And the woman who joins your life will feel grateful, not pressured, to be part of your world.